Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. If someone you knew, someone you admired, someone who was a role model, was in a position of authority, of power, of influence, and was going through a struggle with their mental health, would you want them to speak up? Would you want them to come forward? Or would you rather not know? And once you did know, how would you react? Would you be open, welcoming, wanting to assist, or would you be judging? We're going to explore this topic today on Judgment, the Hidden Sin, the TV show that's in alignment with the book that I wrote, Holy but Harmful, The Silent Sin of Judgment. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and I want to welcome you here today. It's an absolute pleasure. We have someone here who came to see us just a week or two ago on another program with Mr. Red O'Laughlin. And I just really appreciate the fact that Major General Gregg F from the U.S. Army, who is retired, highly decorated combat veteran, former president of the National Defense University, leadership expert and mental health advocate, also known as the Bipolar General, who is also an author, is here to share his story today. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jacalyn. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be on with you.
I really appreciate your time, and I want to get right into it because we were talking backstage. It seems today that in 2026, talking about mental health and being aware of mental health issues is much more accepted than it used to be. I know I'm 63 now, that earlier in my life, it would be like, oh, she's crazy, he's crazy, stay away from them. You know, look at the way they're acting. A lot of judgment took place. And in your career, being highly decorated and leading people and having people look up to you, you were going through your own challenge. When did you realize this?
Well, I didn't realize that I had a serious problem until 2014. I was 58 years old, a two-star general, and I shot into full-blown mania, really a state of manic insanity. And my behavior was so bizarre, impulsive, over the top, that my boss, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, four-star general in the Pentagon, he was so alarmed that he did an investigation and came to the conclusion that there was something really wrong with my mental state, emotional state, etc. And he made the decision that I had to step down or he was going to fire me. That's when I realized that, okay, something's really going on here. And then he ordered me to get a psychiatric evaluation. And I did several, and the doctor said, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you. It wasn't until several months later that, after I'd gone into a state of severe depression, that the doctors could figure out, okay, he was in mania, now he's in depression, he has psychosis, and they were able to diagnose me with bipolar disorder. So that's when I knew I had a mental illness and I had a diagnosis and I needed to figure out a way to get my life back together because it had been shattered. But looking in the rearview mirror, understanding what happened, I actually was born unknowingly with a bipolar brain. I lived with a low level of bipolar disorder my entire life, and it mostly helped me with extra energy, drive, creativity, enthusiasm, and the like. So it elevated my performance for years, decades. But when I was in my 40s, and the jobs in the Army started to become higher level, more pressure, more stress, I now realize that my bipolar disorder went from this very low productive level into a more active form. And then when I went to the Iraq war, it shot it up to an even higher level. And then from Iraq forward, from 2003 till 2014, when I was diagnosed, I started going into higher and higher levels of mania, deeper dives into depression until it all kind of blew up in 2014. Interestingly, I did go to the doctor 7 different times during that run from the Iraq war on. And every single time, except for the seventh, they said, "You're fine. There's nothing wrong with you." And the lesson there is the doctors and the medical people, they're blinded by someone's success. So for me, I was a successful Army senior leader, and they just couldn't conceive that I had bipolar disorder or serious mental illness.
Thank you for sharing that. I have to say, when you watch television and you hear stories like this, you think, oh, that's interesting. But actually being here interviewing you, I have the chills just thinking about what you shared. What about Greg, the person? Not the major general, not the leader, but the human being. To find out from your boss that this is what he thinks is going on, you need to do something, taking you almost like pulling the rug out from underneath you. How did Greg, the human, feel about that?
What a fabulous question. So the chairman, I mean, he's the highest ranking military officer in the country. At the time was Martin Dempsey, really good guy. I had worked for him 4 different times, and he had handpicked me for these really elite, prestigious jobs. And so when he made the tough decision that I was in bad shape, something bad was going on, I needed to get out of that high pressure president role, and he needed to get me medical help. So here's what he did. I got a call on a Friday afternoon, me, the person, that, hey, General Dempsey wants to see you in his office Monday at 10 in the Pentagon. So I went, and I'm thinking, I was so manic. I was thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to get promoted because I'm doing such a great job. Maybe he's going to extend me as the president for a few more years. Or I was aware of this investigation. Maybe he's going to fire me. So I knock on his office door. I go in, and out of the corner of my eye, I see the lawyer. And I'm like, okay, no promotion today. Because I mean, the only reason the lawyer's there is because there's bad news. And General Dempsey, he walked across the room, gave me a big hug, and he said, "Greg, I love you like a brother." So he was very human. He was very warm. He was very kind, compassionate. He said, "I love you like a brother, but something is going on, and I'm not a doctor." He said, "You've done a fantastic job. I give you a grade of an A plus, but your time at the university is over. You have till 5 p.m. today to resign, or I will fire you. And I'm ordering you to get a mental evaluation at Walter Reed, the big military hospital in DC." And he said, "And we are going to retire you from active duty as soon as possible, so your career is in effect over." He said, "What are your questions?" And I was so manic, so manically high. I looked at him and I said, "No question, sir. This is great news because God put me here to do big things. And now he's going to move me and put me somewhere else to do even bigger things." And I gave him a big hug. And General Dempsey, his eyes are wide. He's looking at me like I am insane, which I was. I was in a state of manic insanity. Here's the irony, though, Jacalyn. That was in 2014. So 12 years later, looking back, I was actually right. I am doing the most important, meaningful work like in my life with this mental health advocacy. So personally, that's kind of how that went down. But then as I spun into crippling depression, which followed the extreme mania, it got really dark, awful. I really didn't even want to be alive. I had, suicidal ideations and thoughts. I barely could function for about 2 years, until finally I was hospitalized. Everything started falling apart. My whole life was just pretty much upended. I'm super fortunate my wife didn't abandon me. She stayed with me along with my kids. And ultimately, over a course of 2 years, with the diagnosis, I was finally able to get the right medicine, which for me was lithium. And once I got on the right medication and I sort of biologically and chemically stabilized my brain, that was 10 years ago, I've been on a really positive, strong recovery journey and, feel like I'm making a real difference.
Wow, that is a lot to deal with. So you are in this big meeting, not knowing how it's going to go, and you get this hug, and the message is, I love you, but get out.
Yes.
And your reaction is, fantastic news. Thank you. I've been waiting to hear this because I'm going to take what it is I've been doing and I'm going to build upon it in another way. So at some point, the reality, even though you actually have delivered on what you said you were going to do, the reality hit in, and it must have been like a landslide, maybe thinking back to that day. And did you ever have any, I wonder if I had said this, if it would have changed the situation, or you never looked back and thought I would have done it differently?
Well, that's a very good question. There's a lot of complicated things. I thought, and there was valid, objective reasons for thinking this. I thought that my workforce and my key leaders had turned against me and had sort of manufactured a lot of negative, bad information about me that they fed up the chain of command to get me fired. Now, that's a combination of, I had psychosis, which are a combination of delusions and hallucinations. So while all this was happening, kind of a natural offshoot of the bipolar disorder, um, and I also had pretty significant PTSD from the war in Iraq. Um, I believed people were really against me. So when I got sent to National Defense University, my mission was to transform, elevate, create a more cutting edge university, be entrepreneurial, be bold, change things, find best practices, all that kind of thing. But when you go into an academic environment or a government environment, people don't want to change. I mean, everybody wants to just keep doing it the way that they're doing it. But the chairman had given me this mandate and he told me, be aggressive, go in there, make change. Don't be afraid to break China. Don't be afraid to fire people. So I did. I went in pretty aggressively. Well, that attitude and that mandate combined with my personality and bipolar disorder, I was going too far, too fast, too much of a hurry. I should have, like the amount of work and change I put into effect in 2 years, that probably should have been a 5 or a 10-year process looking back now. But the people really resented, a change leader. And so they would send negative things to the media. They would send negative reports. But my paranoid, delusional mind would spin that up and make it worse than it really was. So it was a complex mix of things that were going on. But I think I probably should have done a better job of carefully um, keeping my boss and the key people around him in the Pentagon. I should have done a better job of informing them, keeping them up to date on the details, the dissension against me and things like that. I think I kind of took that for granted and didn't work that piece of my communication well enough. And then when I got fired, the interesting thing was, in short order, I had 3 psychiatric evaluations where the psychiatrists at Walter Reed said, "Oh, General Martin's fine. He's healthy. He's stable. There's nothing wrong with him." So then, in my bipolar psychotic mind, I took that as proof, as evidence that I am fine. There's nothing wrong with me. It's these disloyal people under me have screwed me over. They've stabbed me in the back. They've gotten me fired. And I totally believed that. And then I had what they call a moral injury, which is another psychiatric condition where when you have given your life and your loyalty to an institution like the university, like the US government, the army, and then they betray you or you think they've betrayed you, that kind of rips a hole in your soul, in your spirit. And that's called a moral injury. And then it has all kinds of significant effects on your mental wellness and your mental state of mind. And then combined with, this raging bipolar disorder and PTSD, that dimension was like literally throwing buckets of gasoline on an already burning fire, and everything just got worse. It wasn't until months and months later when I came out of the mania. I was super depressed. I got the correct diagnosis. I accepted that the diagnosis was right. Over a period of months, maybe even years, I was able to come to the realization that, you know what, I really I was mentally ill. I did a lot of things that alienated my workforce. I probably should have done a better job. But the reality is that there were key rebels in the group who did oppose me, and they did leak and write stories to people around the Pentagon and Washington and in the media in order to bring me down and get me fired. So a lot of mental illness and paranoia going on, fueled by some reality.
It sounds to me from what I heard that your mind is able to process a lot of information very quickly, and maybe the outcome would have been something that would have taken a longer time. And at the same time, there were people who were judging you or evaluating or talking about the situation instead of coming directly to you. Is that accurate?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So when you think back to that time, because this show is about judgment, not about today, but back to that time, how judged did you feel? Were you aware of judgment, of people looking at you in a different way?
Yes. We reached a tipping point when I first went in as president and the chairman put me in, and at the change of command speech, I mean, he really lifted me up and told the university and the Pentagon and all the important people, said, "I have picked Gregg Martin to come in and lead aggressive, bold change at this university. And he has my full backing." And so I was able to pretty well come up with a strategy that he blessed and, put it out in the university with the leaders. And so immediately, I would say probably 25% of the university embraced the ideas and wanted to move forward in this new direction. About 25% really opposed it, and they were going to dig in their heels and fight. And about the 50% in the middle were like, they were fine. They were going to go with wherever the leaders took them. But over time, what ended up happening is the people who opposed it, they were able to sort of poison the well in the Pentagon, in the Congress, um, in the university, and convince people that Martin doesn't really understand this stuff. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He's being too aggressive. He's not listening. He's not relying on the expertise that we've had here for many years. And so they were able to start poisoning the well and getting a lot of the undecideds over to their side. Then over time, as the pressure and the stress of this, it spun up my mania. So I started to get more and more manic as the pressure and the stress of the situation started to go up. Plus, I started having, and this is tied into it, I started having, fairly serious PTSD attacks. And they manifested themselves, my behavior with the mania and the PTSD. I started getting, more and more bizarre, impulsive, unpredictable in my actual behaviors. And that started to kind of sort of frighten people, alarm people, scare them a bit. And so then I think there were a number of people who were originally supporters, but they were kind of startled and afraid, like, whoa, like what's going on with this guy? He seems kind of, he's out there, he's kind of crazy. And I started losing some of my key supporters. And then things just started turning kind of against me. And then I could clearly feel that judgment, that disapproval, that sort of fright. And then those dynamics exacerbated the bipolar disorder, the psychosis, the PTSD. So my mental condition went from bad to worse, which then amplified everything. And then pretty soon, I didn't have very, very many people at all supporting me, which put more stress, more judgment, and then ultimately things just kind of, blew up.
Thank you for sharing that. It makes perfect sense what you said about the trajectory of how the whole thing evolved. I know, just a quick side note, I have ulcerative colitis for 35 years, and people have said I'm dirty and I'm disgusting and I'm not worthy of being loved. And of course, all of those things, you start to take them in and the disease gets worse because
Right.
your mental state starts to impact your physical state. So, Greg, one of the questions I have about this period of judgment, what I found is sometimes we'll be judging people because we're afraid if we are involved with them, it's going to rub off on us. Like, oh, I might get a mental illness if I'm near him, or it might start affecting me. How much did that play a role in what you were experiencing? Or was it something completely different, meaning that as a leader, people were afraid how this would impact your decision making?
I think as people recognized how bizarre my behavior was. And I don't think anybody said, oh, wow, this guy has significant bipolar disorder. I don't think anybody said, boy, this guy's really suffering from psychosis or PTSD. They just knew something was not right. Something was out of whack. I think people then started avoiding me. I knew they were really sort of talking among themselves. I know they were sort of plotting that, okay, this guy is not good for the university. How do we get rid of him? And so they kind of came up with a campaign to do that. And then they started writing anonymous letters, the staff, faculty, and students writing anonymous letters detailing my bizarre behavior, and sending them over to the Pentagon to my boss, who then took all that and in a deliberate, calm, I think fair, judicious way, appointed a little panel of senior people to investigate and do an inquiry and give him recommendations on what they thought they were seeing. So but I think people, they started shying away. I mean, people really started to avoid me as my condition deteriorated. Um, I also saw people, a lot of people who I had mentored and coached and led over a period of years. So not just in the university, but in the broader army and military, those people started falling away, avoiding me, not returning calls, emails, not wanting to be around me, be seen with me, etc. You know, that dynamic really accelerated. It's really interesting. And I had mentored and coached and advanced, dozens of younger officers who were, super successful, made general and everything. And just about all of them and they used to, before I got fired and everything, they used to be really good about staying in touch. And, we had a great relationship. Now, part of that was they wanted the benefit of a more senior guy to be able to help bring them up and get them advanced. But they pretty much dropped off the radar screen. And that was, 12 years ago, and have never come back. I actually asked one of the guys, I said, hey, we were really, really close for such a long time. What's up? How come, you don't want to help me associate, do anything together? And he said, hey, General Martin, I loved you. You were a great leader, great mentor. You were really, really good to me. He said, but that whole crisis situation with the bipolar disorder and getting fired and all that, he said, it frightened me and my wife. I mean, it just frightened us. And we have sort of come to terms with it. We've put it in a box, we've buried it, and we never want to open or see that box again. So, no disrespect to you personally, but we have made that decision to protect our own mental well-being because it was such a traumatic experience for us to see and be a part of all that went on.
Wow. Wow. What a powerful analogy, and so honest. Not talking about how it actually feels, but that's what happened. People are afraid. They live in fear. They make judgments. And then based on that, they disappear. They retreat. Now, another option could have been, let's reach out and see how we can provide support, right? That could be another option. So I feel, and I'd love your thoughts on this, there's no judgment about when people do that because we have the ability to make a choice. But please make that decision and go on your way so that I can move on and find people and surround myself with people who want to support and want to actually mentor and lend a hand to help others. What do you think?
Absolutely. I will say that, what I described probably was the majority for sure of the people in the military that I was dealing with during that real time of crisis. But there were some wonderful people. One guy, he's a retired 3-star named Tom Bostic. He embraced me. He was like a big brother. He said, Greg, anything I can do to help you and Maggie, to support you, medically, time off, vacation, support, if you need someone to talk to. I mean, he invited me over to his house. He would come down the street and, knock on the door. We'd have coffee together. That guy was just an absolute gem. And then when I retired from the Army, there were other Army buddies and West Point people who were very, very good and, compassionate and kind to Maggie and I. And then when we moved to Cocoa Beach, Florida, and started meeting people, I was very open. I'd say, hey, Greg Martin, Army veteran, this is my wife, Maggie. I have a really serious bipolar disorder. I was in the hospital a year ago, but I've rebuilt my life. I'm recovering. and I started writing articles and giving talks, and then the book, and et cetera. And the I mean, really, the embrace, the outpouring of love, compassion, empathy in my Cocoa Beach community with my friends is unbelievable. It is so positive. I mean, I've got the best friends I've ever had, and they are, and none of them have ever been in the military, but they are incredibly supportive. All this whole group, I'm talking a couple dozen. If they've all read my book, they watch the podcast, they're super friendly to me and Maggie. Um, I've got a couple of them who are very, very smart, intelligent people and great writers. Oh, by the way, they're all from this dancing group that Maggie and I do over at the gym. But there's a couple of them, one in particular, who has read every draft article, my entire manuscript of the book, listens to my talks, critiques them, and she's a very high level professional in a big corporation. And she has been brilliant and helpful in me crafting and shaping and improving my message. So, I mean, these people have no reason to be nice to me. They like me. They like Maggie. They love being our friends. They think it's cool that, like, I'm an Army guy. They think it's cool that, I'm open about my mental illness and I'm trying to help others. So I would say now, it's a huge, big positive element as opposed to negative. And the other piece is that I've gotten into this whole mental health community, which is global. And Jacalyn, I have met and am friends with and work with the best people of my life. Smart, caring, compassionate, fun, happy, great to be with. And so I feel really blessed to have this whole turnabout.
It sounds like your journey has taken you right to where you're supposed to be. So I want to talk a little bit about your book. Before we move into that, going back to where you were and what you were experiencing, there are people out there right now in different walks of life in different parts of the world who are going through something similar, even though they weren't a major general, right? But they don't know how to deal with it. Maybe they don't even know what's going on, like what you said. What are some of the signs that there might be something going on with mental health that needs to warrant a visit to a doctor?
Great question. So we're all susceptible to these mental health conditions of various flavors and everything. I mean, depression is very, very common. Anxiety, very common. PTSD is common. Traumatic brain injuries are common. Bipolar disorders is pretty common. So I would say think about yourself and sort of do a self-assessment or like a check on yourself and just think, okay, how am I doing? How am I feeling? Am I getting the sleep I need? Am I healthy? What about my happiness and motivation level? How am I getting along with people? How am I performing? Just kind of do an overall inventory of checking yourself. And then the same with people you're close to, your spouse, your family members, your friends, close work colleagues, and just say, okay, am I okay? Yes or no? And so what are some of the things to look out for? Well, if you're not sleeping, if you are not eating right, if you really are lacking energy, if you're really seem, overly sad, and not just having a bad day, you're sad about, something that happened, but is it extended and is it deep? Because that can be a sign of depression. How about your energy levels? Are you, it's fine to be enthusiastic and have good positive energy, but if you start really going up to an unusual level where you're having trouble sleeping because you have so much energy, you're talking faster and faster, you're getting ideas faster and faster, you're starting to think in a grandiose way that you really are some kind of savior of the world or the smartest person. And so there's all these different signs and symptoms. if you recognize or detect those, go see a medical professional. Go see somebody. Go talk to them. Bring a spouse, a family member, a close friend, someone who knows you well. Bring them to the appointment to see, your general practitioner, a nurse, a psychologist, whoever, and have an honest conversation and see, is there something worth going into greater depth in checking? And if they say no, that's good news. But keep an eye on yourself anyway, because, I had that bipolar disorder my whole life, went to the doctor many times, and they never diagnosed it. They couldn't see it because some of this stuff is hard to detect. But anyway, stay with the medical channel. And then if you or someone gets a diagnosis, I would say, don't deny it. Don't hide from it. Embrace it. Just say, okay, I have a condition inside my brain. Nobody thinks bad about having, a broken knee or heart disease or cancer or diabetes. They get the diagnosis, they do the work, they do the recovery, and they get on with their life. Well, it should be the same with, any kind of mental condition. So embrace the diagnosis, own it, just say, okay, this is true, it's real, then learn about it, and then develop a strategy to counter it, to recover, and to regain, fullness in a happy, healthy, purposeful life. And then, just get on with living a good life. So those are the things that I would recommend. And if you feel depressed about it, also any signs of suicidality or not wanting to live or not wanting to be alive, those are real signals that you have a mental condition. The other thing to keep an eye on is if you have a marked change in your marriage, your relationships, your home life, your job, anything that gets like out of whack and is disruptive to the healthy flow of your life, those are oftentimes telltale signals that there might be something going on in terms of mental health. One final thing. I remember when I was in the depth of depression, I never thought I was going to get better. But a good friend kind of came alongside and said, yes, you will. My son, my friend, my whoever had a serious mental illness. They were in the depths of despair. They never thought they would recover, but they did, because they got the right help, they got the right meds, they got the right treatment, and you will too. And so there's no substitute for a human connection and hope that you will get better. That's huge in terms of recovery.
Such valuable information that you just shared there. Basically, what I'm taking away from it is that if you realize something is off and it starts to progress, be aware of it, seek help. If you get the diagnosis, you can take that diagnosis as almost a launching pad for where it is you're going to go next, instead of something like a bag of bricks that is holding you back. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
They've looked at my life and they said, man, you took lemons and turned them into lemonade, taking a crisis, and then turning into something bigger, better, newer, that gives you a whole new life. And I kind of really, when you think about it, so I was high success, crashed into devastation, crisis, and then really have rebounded out of it into a whole new life. Like it's kind of going from darkness to light, death to life. And so the way you described it is perfect.
And your book, My Forever War with Mental Illness, really is such a great summary of what we've been talking about today, because it goes on, it's continuous, just like with ulcerative colitis. It's a chronic disease. So my question for you is, how much of the healthy outlook and embracing the launch pad and where you're going is based on medication, or some other processes that you use, maybe meditation or affirmations? I don't know what they are, but could you share that with us so we have an idea of how you manage this on a daily basis?
Yes. So 10 years ago, I was in crisis. I mean, I had been in years of crippling depression, terrifying psychosis. I wanted to die. I was in horrible condition and I tried all kinds of things. I was hospitalized, but it took the right medication, which for me is a combination of lithium and lamictal or lamotrigine. And so all those other things didn't get me to a stable base until I got the right medication that went into my brain and gave me stability, biological, chemical stability. So that was necessary, but not sufficient. I also find that I get great benefit from psychotherapy, talking to a trained psychologist about how to think about your life, how to develop tools and methods of self understanding. But then there's more. A person needs to live a healthy lifestyle with 8 hours of sleep, plenty of water, low stress, healthy diet, plenty of exercise. So, medication, psychotherapy, healthy living, absolutely necessary. But then there's more to it. I have what I call the 5 Ps. I developed a purpose for my life, a mission statement, which is for me sharing my bipolar story to help stop stigma, promote recovery, and save lives. So that purpose gives me inspiration to live. The second P is people, being around people who are inspiring, energizing, and fun. And I've got that in Cocoa Beach, mainly with my the fitness dancing crowd who are so cool. They're so fun to be with. So those are the first 2 Ps. The third P is place. It really mattered for me in my bipolar state. I was living in the north where I'm from, but the cold, dark, gray winters were really exacerbating my depression with the bipolar. So we made a decision to move to bright, sunny, warm Florida, and it's helped. So place matters. And then perseverance, just having the will to fight and win every day, one step, one day at a time, not giving up, to keep going with your care plan, your recovery plan. And then the fifth P is perspective. I think it's super important for any human to think objectively about their own thinking, and that's called metacognition. But what that means is your own mind can make things worse than they really are. You can lose your perspective, your sense of objectivity. You can take little things and turn them into a crisis. Um, and so I think it's important to have this objective thinking, like, okay, I have serious mental illness. Is it the end of the world? No. Uh, with working with the medical professionals, taking my medication, doing therapy, being healthy, getting sleep, hanging out with fun people, I can live a great life. So, don't make it worse. I mean, there's people who have horrible cancer or heart disease or strokes that their life is much tougher and more challenging than mine is. So don't feel sorry for yourself. Have a plan, get on with it, move forward, help other people. So that's kind of my strategy.
Very powerful, and so many nuggets for people to take away from what you talked about today. Before we close out, Greg, with your book, we have been putting it up on the screen where people can buy it. What would you like people to take away from reading it, and who would be a good reader to purchase it?
First, the book applies to pretty much anyone. Even though I was in the military and I'm a veteran, it really is applicable to all humans. So I would say anybody who is interested in just health in general, mental health in particular, uh, anybody who's in a leadership position or aspires to be a leader, anybody in the medical community, I think it really applies to. And then, anybody in the military or the veterans community, I think it applies to, in particular. It's interesting. I think the greatest interest in this book has been in the professional medical community. So doctors, med schools, nurses, universities, that whole setting. Um, Pretty much anybody, but those ones in particular. Um, what people should get out of it, I think, is okay, here was this very healthy, very successful guy in the military, rose to the highest levels unknowingly with bipolar disorder, that helped him until it didn't. And then he crashed and had a crisis that could have killed him. He was hospitalized, fired, retired, all that bad stuff. And I could have died. And if I didn't get the right treatment and the right medication, I very well may have died 10 years ago from one form or another: suicide, violence, being arrested and killed in prison. But because of the professional medical community, the support of my family and friends, and then the sort of the perseverance to not give up, to not kill myself, to not quit, I have been able over the last decade to put together a plan and come back to life. And it's possible. There is hope for anybody. And it's not just mental illness. People have tragedies of all different types. You can come back. There is hope. You can resurrect yourself. And from those really terrible experiences, you can then be a source of inspiration, encouragement, hope, help, to help other people put their lives back together and make a difference. So that's really, really the story. It's it's a story of resilience, perseverance, and I think grace. I mean, I don't think I would be here. I don't think I would have had this recovery if it weren't for, really the grace of God and the kindness of other humans.
Major General Gregg Martin, I have to say, I think you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Your story is so inspiring. I mean, to think about the level of leadership that you were in with the U.S. Army, and then what happened after that and where you are today. And you have this energy and this charisma. I think I would follow you wherever you were going. So keep up the phenomenal work. And I want to thank you for your service. And I want to thank you for sharing your story. I think what people don't realize is when a person like yourself comes forward and shares the story, that takes a lot of commitment and energy, because you've got to go back. You've got to go back and bring it back up again and again. And so not only have you written this book, but you are going around soon, starting a tour, giving speeches to inspire other people and help people realize that having a mental illness, being diagnosed as bipolar, is not the end. It could potentially be the beginning. It's all about what you do with that information, that diagnosis.
Well, thank you, Jacalyn. You summarized it perfectly, and I really appreciate your encouragement. I mean, you're fueling me to keep going out and telling the story and encouraging people. So thank you. And it's such an honor to be on with you, and wonderful to meet you.
Thank you so much. I hope one day I get to shake your hand and give you a big hug.
Me too. I can't wait. I have to come to Philly.
Absolutely. We've been sharing your contact details in the show notes, but for anyone who wants to reach out to you, who would you like to contact you, and what's the best way to do so?
The best way to contact me is go to my website, which is bipolargeneral.com. And there's a a link there. You click on it, and you can write me an email right from that. If that somehow doesn't work, my email is gregmartin79@gmail.com. And I am also on LinkedIn and Facebook.
And we have those here as well for people to go and follow you. So please do. All right, Major General, what is the final word as we close out the show today?
Mental illness touches everybody in our country and in the world. It's 25% of people have a mental illness they're afflicted, and then the other 75% are affected by it because their family, friend, or work colleague. So it's 100%. So it makes no sense to deny it, to stigmatize it, to hide from it. We just need to understand that it's real. It touches everybody. It's understandable. The professional medical community knows how to deal with and treat these conditions. And so if in doubt, go see a medical professional, get help, and then you can manage these conditions and live a life that is perfectly healthy and happy. In fact, literally millions of people of all walks of life are living right now with mental illness, and they're doing great. And interestingly, a lot of our most successful people, business, entrepreneurs, artists, military leaders, political leaders, are living with mental conditions like bipolar disorder, and many to most of them are doing really well. But it's because they recognized it and they're getting the help they need.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for ending the show on this note. I really appreciate you. And I will be following you and where you're going and wishing you well. Thank you again.
My pleasure, Jacalyn. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for now. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to go run 10 miles, do 100 jumping jacks. I have so much energy. The Major General just really is filled with so much passion and commitment. We haven't met in person, but I feel like I've known him for 100 years already. So please do reach out to him, because I am sure that he is going to make a positive impact on your life. Order his book over on Amazon and follow him on social media. For any of you out there who are struggling with something, and let's face it, we don't get out of this life without going through something, because it's part of the journey. It's part of where we're learning. And one of the major takeaways that I have today from listening to Greg is that wherever it is that we are and what we're going through, that could be the stepping stone, the trampoline, if you will, to take us to the next level. I know for me, I don't like having ulcerative colitis for 35 years, but I wouldn't be here today with this television network if I didn't have ulcerative colitis. So I have to be grateful for it. So what are you living with? What's going on in your life? Are you looking at it as doom and gloom? Are you embracing and saying, wow, I have this happening for me? What am I going to do with it? The first thing is go out and help other people. Help other people realize that it's not a curse. It may be the next chapter to your life. Thank you for being with us. If you have not done so before or yet, please do subscribe to our channels. We have two of them on YouTube, USA Global TV and Radio, where we have earned the YouTube Silver Creator Award for over 100,000 subscribers. And my own personal channel, which I started a couple of years ago, we've got over 40,000, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. And of course, we're on social media. We're on Amazon Fire. We are distributed on Roku and LG and Samsung and so on. But we'd love to have you on YouTube. If you'd like to be a guest on any of our shows, please go to our website, usaglobaltv.com. And finally, wherever you are in the world and whatever you're going through, realize that this could be the opportunity of a lifetime for you to look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm not suffering, I'm thriving. Thanks again. We're going to close out with a message from one of our team members, Mr. Red O'Laughlin, who has launched his newest book called Aging Sucks. Take a look.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author Red O'Loughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
People are searching for experts every day. Are they finding you, or are they finding someone else? Every day, professionals are building authority through media. We've already built the platform. USA Global TV and Radio. Over 14,000 shows streamed to over 60 countries. This isn't about becoming famous. It's about leverage, visibility, credibility, opportunity. One interview, one conversation, one show, repurposed into content, connection, and business growth. Most people assume hosting a TV show requires a studio, a production team, and a massive budget. Our television packages begin at $1,500 US per month. Professional production, global distribution, replay visibility, built for voices with something to say. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and if this resonates with you, we should talk. USA Global TV and Radio, all rights reserved. Contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USAGlobalTV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.